I guess let's start off the podcast with a little introduction. So, I first met Andrew at a church event, and a few years later, we were in the same French immersion class in grade 9, and then we had a couple of courses that were similar, but then what really happened was in grade 10 and above, we took IB, and there was only one IB class in our high school, so we ended up being in the same cohort until graduation. Andrew did cross country and badminton, but for cross country, he had a foot problem, which hindered his running. I think he still has a foot problem.
Yeah, yeah, pretty
Yeah.
persistent to this day. I still wear orthotics, and I don't really I like my ortho my podiatrist says that I still shouldn't really be running. So I can resort to other modes of physical activity, but running for me is pretty well still a chore.
Okay. Yeah, and to me personally, I saw that our main group for high school was you, Daniel, and me,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that group specifically was very cohesive, and we would do meetups. There were other guys in the IB class that we were close with, but that was the main group. I'd also say that you're very stats oriented. I notice this every time we play Rocket League. Andrew will list off the stats. So even the stats that aren't on the game, he'll say, for example, we've had three, I don't know, corner kickoffs, random things like that, which I find very interesting. That it kind of shows how his mind works differently. And to add to that, I think that Andrew has a high IQ. I think he's very intelligent. He's very well read, and he has an incredible memory too. You can also see that I I don't know, I can't diagnose whether he has a high IQ, but I see that he learns quicker than others and he can learn abstract things very well. Currently, he's at Queen's University in Kingston for chemical engineering.
Engineering chemistry, so
Oh,
almost the same thing, but I suppose it's a bit nuanced, but it's a little different. In that, I guess we just take a few more chemistry classes. We get to participate sort of in the flagship chemistry course at Queen's, which is a year-long lab course where they get to do some more technical and analytical things in the lab using some more complicated instruments and stuff than the standard chemical engineers get to do. So we sort of get the best of both worlds. And this is a unique program because you get to graduate with only one degree, but you are given two professional accreditations. So you are eligible to become a professional engineer, get your PEng, and you're also a certified chemist. So you can do things that I guess a certified chemist can do, which I'm not totally sure on because that's not necessarily my path, but that is an option coming out of the degree. And something that people will tell you who are knowledgeable in the field will tell you that it's difficult to learn chemistry once you've gotten past the age of 25 or so when you do most of your learning. So you can always teach people how to do more math and how to do more engineering based learning, but you cannot teach people chemistry once they're old.
that's interesting. Just to finish off the summary, I guess, or the introduction. This one's oh, okay. So you're currently on a 16-month co-op, and this is a bit personal, but you mentioned that you had a heart attack recently, and so you cycle daily in order to combat that or prevent it in the future.
Yeah,
That's
I mean, so I don't really know what to call it. I suppose according to my doctor and the medical professionals I saw, a stress-based, I don't even know what to call it. I wasn't really given a real name, but it was stress-based and it really felt like a heart attack and it had, I guess, been building up over time. I had some problems earlier this year, where I was feeling a lot of pain in my chest and then eventually it sort of went away. And then recently, maybe 2 months ago, um, maybe a little less than that, like I woke up one night sort of out of nowhere and the pain in my chest was absolutely splitting through my heart and shooting down my arm. And so Um, I mean, even if it's nothing, right? Even if you can't call it a heart attack, medically it's nothing. It made me sort of reevaluate a few things in the sense that like I need to be doing more. I need to get back on my hobbies and the things that I love and enjoy. So it really made me redouble my efforts in places, and one of those being cycling. I used to cycle quite a bit in high school with my dad, and he's a big cyclist himself, and so coming back after that and with the weather being nice, I've really gotten back into that. Gotten all my clothes and got my bike from home because it hadn't been here. And I mean, it's been nearly a month now of daily cycling and just doing 15, 20K a day. And I'm going to be getting out hopefully next week for my first longer ride. I'm going to aim for a 50K ride. I've got my route planned. And for now, it's still from a just being physically active standpoint is sort of where I'm coming from. My goal is to be physically active again as I guess once was. I mean, I'm in good shape and I'm healthy, but something like that sort of makes me take my given heart health for granted. Despite being a young person and being in apparent health, it's always important to make sure. I mean, as I've been told by medical professionals and the internet of all things, that staying physically active is always important, regardless of how good of a shape you might seem to be in.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. I got into working out, so going to the gym pretty consistently, and recently I've just had a lack of motivation, but it's really good that you're doing this consistently every day.
Mm.
I feel like at some point you might run into a little plateau in terms of motivation, but that's no, that's great for starting out. I think that's good. Going off of that though, so you do cycling, but what else do you do to take care of yourself physically?
For the longest time, I guess 11 years now, sailing has been a huge part of my life, which is a bit foreign to most people, but that has been basically my childhood, my adolescence, and into my early adulthood. So I started just doing it as a summer camp and I loved it. And then I really loved it. And so joined the local race team, got some very high performance experience with a great coach and a really strong team, like the best team in the province. Just, I mean, I suppose if anybody's watching this and knows, just sailing Opti for a while with a really strong team, got to go to some big events, got to place decently well at some big events. And so that was always something that I did to take care of myself, get physically active and stay outside in the summer. And then once I sort of aged out of the boat, became an instructor. And so I sort of, my interest sort of weaned. And then last year was my final year as an instructor. And I really, really made a concerted effort to sail a lot. And so I was putting in, I mean, 10, 15 hours of training a week, and I had no desire to compete or race ever again. But I was still putting in time basically every day after my 8 hour workday as a sailing instructor. I was getting out on the water, or I was waking up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning to get out in the morning before the kids got there, and then go out again after they left. And I think that I've come to the realization that sailing is something that's awesome for me because I love it so much and I've spent so much time on it. But I don't think I'm necessarily in the headspace to race anymore. But as far as just a taking care of myself physically thing, I would say that's always will be a huge part of my life, even if it isn't necessarily one right now.
Yeah, so you think you're gonna keep on doing sailing even when you grow old?
Yeah, even if it's not dinghy sailing and small boats that require a lot more physical fitness and agility, I'll always have the desire to just, when I'm old, buy a bigger boat, buy a keel boat, and just have a cruise around because I think that sailing is a lifelong activity. Once you put yourself into the community, it sort of never goes away because you'll always be able to connect with people about that in the way that it's sort of a niche thing that still has a lot of very devoted followers.
Yeah, I think that's really cool though. I don't know anybody else who sails. I think you're the only person, and not only that, you competed at a national level in high school. That
Yeah,
was
all
really
throughout high
impressive.
school.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I I also want to so during high school too, I remember you started working out. You went to the gym for maybe a few months, And then did you stop? What happened there?
So I was under this like idea that I still wanted to compete. This does stem from a sailing point of perspective, I guess. So and I was switching boats. I was too old for the boat that I was sailing, and so I swapped to a bigger boat. And if you look at Olympians in this boat, it's a laser. Or now you can't call it that anymore. It's called an ILCA, ILCA for the International Laser Class Association. So it's still the same boat, but now it's owned by a different company. So if you look at Olympians in this boat, I mean, the men are, generally 6 foot plus, 180, 200 pounds plus of well-built muscle. And so I was at this like crossroads where it was like, I want to sail this boat and I have a boat. I mean, like I have a laser and I want to compete and I want to sail, so I need to get in the gym and start putting weight on because I am 5'7" and like 120 pounds. So I started, and then I realized that I wasn't going to grow any taller, and I totally killed my own motivation inadvertently. And not that it's at all a bad thing, but the gym is not necessarily something that's super important to me. I like to maintain my physical fitness in other ways. I think that I always end up killing my own motivation for it, but I generally never get tired of other forms of physical activity, whether that just be cycling, sailing, or just going for a walk or playing recreational sports in a rec league or just with my friends or whatnot. I don't know. The gym just doesn't stick with me. Perhaps it's a lack of discipline, but
So it wasn't for aesthetics.
no, it was so that I could compete still. I really
Ah,
I knew I needed to get better, or I needed to be bigger, and it really didn't work out for me.
dang, I thought it was for aesthetics. I think I mainly go for aesthetics, go to the gym for
Mhm.
aesthetics, just to look better. But a little bit is strength. I don't there's nothing I do that is strength related that I would need a lot of strength for. So I don't really have that goal in mind, but it is nice to have.
I think for most people, it's probably something like that, a mix of appearance and aesthetics
Yeah.
and just the somewhere to channel your personal growth and this somewhere to grow and something to get better at. Um, I guess is a big thing for people in the gym because not only do you want to look good, you want to feel good, and physical activity makes you feel good. So I think that's a bit of a combination motivation factor for people.
Mm. So for what would you how do you take care of yourself mentally now? So what would you do for low mood, I guess?
I have a lot of varied hobbies, and I do have a few, I guess, that I resort to most if I'm actually feeling unwell, if I'm not feeling good, if I'm just feeling down for the day. Um, I like to I like to do something that I know will not make me upset. So something that isn't necessarily competitive, I think is a hobby or an activity that I'll resort to first. So
So not Rocket League.
no, I would play a game that I would play. I would not play games on my own, 100%. If I'm feeling really, really horrible, I won't play a game on my own because I'm more likely to probably tilt if it's just me. But it's not embarrassing, but I think it's different to actually get mad when there's somebody else there, right? If I'm just playing not necessarily a co-op game, but just a relaxing game with a friend of mine, then I think it's a lot harder for me to get upset because I think there's somebody else to sort of balance out your mood. And generally, even if I go into something having a horrible mood and I'm just playing a game and having a good time, I think generally that will boost my mood. Aside from that, though, again, something that I can't necessarily lose at, I can only get better at. So I'm a big fan of memory related tasks and sort of just learning things. And so something like my current project, which is learning all the area codes in the US. So if I'm not feeling good for the day, I'll probably start something like that, get back and not necessarily try and learn something new, especially if I'm frustrated already, but kind of reinforcing wins I already know makes you feel good. I know this. Like I know how to do this. I know all these area codes. I know the first whatever 200 area codes. That's a great way, obviously specific to each person and rather um I guess rather from a narrow point of view, that's just my own experience, but something like that that you know you can do is a great way. to just boost your mood. And like honestly, just like something super chill on YouTube, and a good relaxing atmosphere, I think usually puts me in a good mood. And I'd listen to music actually is a big thing. Probably not on my headphones, probably from my record player, I think. If I'm actually in a bad mood, I don't want to put my headphones on and sort of isolate myself. I just want to play music out loud. I think is a bit more enticing to be in the atmosphere. It makes you feel a little bit better if you listen to something that way as opposed to just like in your headphones. It feels a bit more moody and not a little less open, I guess.
Okay. So this was kind of related to your GeoGuessr. Would you say GeoGuessr is a project? Or
Yeah,
GeoGuessr is related to area codes? So you want to get better at GeoGuessr so that you'll just get better at general geography.
the area codes was an offshoot of the GeoGuessr. So I've been playing basically Canada only GeoGuessr for a while now, and like I had started to become a lot more satisfied with my performance, I guess. Like I'm on the leaderboard now on like the most of the Canada maps on GeoGuessr for the fastest times to get a 25k score. So I'm in like the top 25 leaderboard on a few of the maps now. So I was like, I'm happy with that, and I want to move on to something else. So I decided, I know all the Canadian area codes. There's not that many, so it was pretty easy. So I decided to move on to the US, and the like some of the easiest things that you can do to get better at GeoGuessr if you want to learn a specific country or learning all the pole tops, learning like the road lines, but in the US, I mean, it's pretty uniform. And then learning area codes is kind of just a fun way that you can easily distinguish a few look-alike things. So for Canada, I mean, using whatever Southern Ontario area codes can be really helpful to help distinguish parts of the GTA apart from one another and aside from a plethora of other clues. So I wanted to do that for the US. And I decided that I was just going to undertake the challenge of learning all 317 area codes. So the GeoGuessr came first, and the area codes are sort of just a supplement to that.
Oh, I see. Okay. So what I'm a little confused because I don't find geography that fascinating. I think area codes is a very applicable part of geography, practical in the sense that if you know the area codes, uh, you you could find a situation where you would need to know an area code.
Mhm.
But I don't feel any drive towards geography, learning geography. What would you say drives you, motivates you?
Maybe growing up around it, traveling a bunch as a kid, just by sheer luck. I mean, of my situation as a kid living in another country, I was lucky enough to be able to travel, and I think that maybe that sort of gave me a skewed point of view where like learning about new places and going to new places is fun. And since I can remember caring about knowing things, I've always wanted to know all 196 countries. Like at probably 11 or 12 or 13, I was already trying to do the 196 countries quiz
Mm,
and probably at that point getting them all. And every year or so I come back and I do it again just to double check that I still know them all. And I think that maybe just it was something that was put into my head from an early age. I mean, my dad's a navigator. My dad loves maps. My parents love to travel. There's a million maps in my house. My parents' house, I guess.
yeah,
There's travel and maps. There's just stuff everywhere. And my dad is super into that stuff also. I mean, him and I still challenge each other to geography memory-based games, even now when I don't live with my parents anymore. And I think sort of the way that particularly my dad thinks is very similar to mine. I mean, going to church with my parents as a kid, my dad would ask me to add up all the numbers of the hymns on the board and find out if it was a prime number. Like things like that. It's always been a memory and learning environment for me as a kid, and I think that was something that my parents really fostered for me growing up was just to always acquire more information no matter what it be in. And I think that my fixation has just always been on geography, as a hobby to just learn because I think it's cool. I can't really answer your question in one word as to why I think it's so awesome. Maybe it's just sort of a nurtured environment that I was brought up in that sort of made it that way. So now I guess the answer is just because I like to know. I like to know that I have it memorized.
yeah. I would say for the countries quiz, all the countries quiz, that is satisfying. I remember doing that with you in high school,
Mhm, mhm.
and being able to participate was really nice. Like remembering one specific country and contributing, it felt satisfying.
Mhm.
You mentioned going to church. I wanted to ask you about your spiritual life, I guess. Would you consider yourself religious?
Right now, I guess maybe it's a bit more difficult to say. I don't think that, I mean, obviously, I don't go to church as much as I used to. I go with my parents when I'm home and on special occasions, but I'm not really feeling necessarily religious, but I do think that I'm still very, not very, I do think I'm still quite spiritual. And I think, in the sense that I don't have any reason to believe that God or a higher power isn't real. Just maybe at a crossroads as far as organized religion. Not as so far as to say that I'm thinking of converting to a different religion, but maybe just n- I don't know if I need organized religion to feel a connection with God or a higher power. I know that somebody out there is looking out for me, and I do still pray occasionally, and I do find that it brings me some peace of mind in difficult moments. So I guess that about answers that. I mean, maybe just not organized, but spiritual still.
Okay. I was thinking, I asked you three main questions about physical health, mental health, and spiritual health. And I was wondering how spiritual health plays into that because it's very obvious for people to take care of their physical health and mental health. But I find that people tend to neglect their spiritual health. And it's hard for me to say, obviously, I'm biased because I'm Catholic. And so I believe in like a religion. And I believe that it's good to believe this and
Hmm.
you should prioritize it even. But maybe as someone who's less, who's spiritual in a different way, would you say that spirituality is as important as those two other things?
To me, probably not. At least not at this point in my life. I'm confident, I guess, that at some point in my life, I will eventually be drawn back to organized religion because I'll think that, I don't know, perhaps maybe it's selfish to think that I don't necessarily need it, that I'm happy to live life as is, as still a follower of God, but not necessarily in the way that most people are followers. So I think that it really depends on who you ask. I mean, people who are atheists or non-believers in any higher power at all are will definitely say no. If you ask a devout Catholic or a Muslim or a Jew, they will definitely say yes. So it's I guess it really depends on who you ask. But for me, as somebody who's somewhere sort of in the middle, um, I think that maybe it's something I could put more time into. Maybe this is making me realize that I need to not necessarily repair, but
Hmm. Um, yeah, I would mention though, for atheists, I remember Sam Harris talking about how meditation is so powerful. So it's not even that they it's it's how you define spirituality. Because Sam Harris, I'm sure, would consider spirituality, what I consider spirituality, more under the mental health side. So really his two pillars are just physical and mental health. I would assume. That's I think that's good if you get back into a spiritual mindset, a more religious side. Again, obviously I'm biased, but I remember in high school I was somewhat religious And I think I seemed more connected with God than I actually was from the outside. But having been humbled in life, you really realize, like, there's very little I can do without God, or even like there's just a lot of overthinking that goes on where it's like, what is even the purpose of my life? Where can I derive meaning? And a bunch of other deep thoughts that you can get into. But I felt that the religious side, the spirituality, almost fixed those questions, answered those questions that I was missing. And again, I still have to work on it, but you can never be perfect at it. So I can
No,
always
yeah,
increase.
no book is ever finished
Hmm.
as far as a human goes. Nobody's ever written their final copy. I mean, people always want to get better, and that's pretty inevitable. You always want to be better at something, and there's always going to be somebody who's already better at you at that chapter of their life.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, it truly is inevitable. You can't do anything about it. All you can do is be better than you were yesterday, and you can't beat yourself up when you fail.
Hmm. I think right now we'll get more into the deep questions since I think we started hitting more on a deeper note.
Mhm.
I'm going to start by saying I find regrets tend to be things you don't do rather than do. You tend to regret things that you don't do. And I believe that I think I heard this from someone, but I can't quite remember who it was. We are wired to regret as humans. So no matter what decision we make, there will always be a regret, since you can both regret something that you didn't do or that you did do. And considering that, it's a matter of choosing the regret. So going off of that, what would you say your biggest regrets are?
First of all, I think I want to say that's just a very interesting way to look at it. That no matter what you do, there will always be some sort of regret because inherently everything is a decision, yes or no, to do something or do something else. So in some way, I think that's a bit of a nihilist, but also very real way to look at it. I mean, if I were to go my life considering that every choice I make has a positive or negative outcome beyond, I guess, the short term fulfillment of whatever I need to get done, I think that is pretty jarring. But I would say that my biggest regret will always be not trying harder. And I think that, and it's been something that I've been telling people, I mean, kids that I coach and stuff who are serious and telling people that I care about when they're involved in things is you will never regret winning, but you will always regret not trying harder. Because, I think this really, really applies to my time sailing because all I can think about now is the amount of times I didn't want to go practice, the amount of times I didn't want to go sail, the amount of times I didn't want to do this, do that, whatever. Imagine how much better I could have been if I just tried harder. And it's so easy to say that now, and it becomes very difficult in the moment. But seriously, to anybody who might ever see this, do not give up right now because all you will think about forever is if you could have just tried harder. There are no redos, just try harder. Put one more session in, put one more hour in, put one more rep in, do one more because all you will think about is that you didn't try harder. And this applies less to small things. I mean, in the gym, doing one less rep is not necessarily super consequential, but going one less day a week, doing one less exercise per session, going one extra, I don't know, something like that, it not really in the short term, but it adds up in the long term. But also, as far as something bigger like a competition goes, especially something that you like that you will never regret winning. I suppose unless you cheat, you will never regret winning. Who thinks about winning and wishes they didn't win? Nobody wants to not win. I mean, seriously, I think my biggest regret is always going to be not trying harder. If I could go back right now with the mentality that I have now, I think I could be twice as good, if not better. And I was stuck in the mentality that I couldn't get better because I had so little time. I just wasn't in the right, I wasn't physically gifted enough to be the right size. There were people that were better than me. There was always circumstances that were better. And I think if I went back now with the mentality that I have now, that I just need to try harder, I think that it would have saved me from not disappointment, but maybe earned me some extra accolades and some more enjoyment out of that because I can't go back. It's over.
Mm.
I really can't go back, and I regret it now. I wish I'd tried harder.
Yeah, that's I think that's a really powerful little speech you had there. I You know what blew my mind is I was talking with Daniel,
Mhm.
one of our for context, he's one of our high school friends, and he was telling me that I don't have any regrets because no matter how I did it, it influences how I act now, and from that I learned. So as long as I learn from it, it's not a regret. And I mean, to me it just really shifted how I thought about regrets. And it's true. Everything you regret, at least for me, is something that I need to look out for in the future, something that will save me in the future, that will help me improve. And specifically for what you said, I think that's extremely applicable. Moving more to a specific question, I think you mentioned part of it, although it was a very general case for sailing. More specifically, what would you give what advice would you give to your younger self?
Don't listen to the haters, and in this case, the haters are you. I'm my own biggest hater, and I think that was always my problem. In school and in life and in sports, I think I have always been my own biggest enemy, and I think I would tell myself to not listen to that person. Probably just leave it at a few words that I've seen. I can't remember his name, but there's a guy um, who did a oh my goodness, I can't remember his name. He did an Ironman in Antarctica, and his lifelong goal, not lifelong goal, he decided to become a soccer player when he was like 25 or 30. He just scored his first professional goal, and he's only just started playing basically. And he said, whatever they say you can't do, do it anyway. And I think if I had to give my younger self any words, it would just be that. And in this case, they is just that other part of my brain. I always like to break it down into like your passive and active brain, and your passive brain is the one that's putting you on autopilot and just sort of taking your preconceived biases and notions and thoughts about yourself and just sort of like putting you through life on autopilot. And your active brain is what you can choose to take over with and be better and do better than your previous attempt and actually improve at something. And in this case, I would be telling myself to not listen to the passive brain, the lazy, do nothing, chase dopamine, be literally nothing part of our brain is our passive brain. And I think everybody has their active brain. They just need to listen to it more. I think um, I would just tell myself that because that's what I'm learning now in life is that I just need to listen to that part of your brain that tells you to keep going, to try harder is the most important part of your psyche.
Yeah. Interestingly, I think even though gym is really attributed to physical health, there is some mental aspect to it where the consistency, the routine, having not only that of going to the gym, but also everything around it. You have to have your sleep well organized. You have to eat enough protein, eat enough meals. And if you're even going for bulking and cutting, then you'd want to go in a calorie surplus. You have to manage that calorie deficit. There's so much that goes into it outside of just the physical health. And I think that's where I learned, I would say your lesson, I learned it intuitively through going to the gym. And and definitely there's other commitments that you make. For example, soccer. I played soccer where I had to go, and at first your parents force you and you don't want to. You realize you don't know why they're forcing you. And then at some point you're like, okay, I realize why my parents forced me to do this. I regret not going to this, not taking badminton classes, for example. But I liked what you said a lot. I think that's applicable to a lot of people, the general population. Do you have any specific regrets for high school?
I'm not really sure that I do. And probably if you asked me that 3 years ago, I would say yeah. But I think that I guess things that I was regretting at the time were probably pretty insignificant now. I mean, you can always say, I wish I had studied harder for a test, or I wish I had made more friends, but I've always been fairly content with the friends that I have. I'm not fairly content. I've always been content with the friends that I have. And I like the people that I spend my time with. And if I don't like somebody, I'm just going to choose not to spend time with them. And I liked my friends through high school. I think we had a good group of friends, at least especially at the core. Um, so I don't really think that I have any particular high school regrets.
I wonder if you share a regret with me. I felt, yes, I liked our friend group for sure. I completely agree with that. But I felt like I should have socialized a bit more because I met um like just while I was home for the summer and the winter term as well. I met with people from high school, from our high school, and I felt more connection than I would have expected. I don't know if you remember this person, Xavier Crittenden, and there was also James, I forget his last name. But I remember talking with them 2 months ago, I think, and it I remember having this preconception that they were just like really different from me and not admirable as a friend.
Mhm.
But now I realize these people could have been potential friends that I just never knew. I realize that more now that I went to university and going to residence, I made a bunch of friends. And I thought, what would have happened if I hadn't gone to this residence or if I had gone off campus? I likely would have never met these people that I regard so highly, but at the same time, I would have met other people. It, I would just say that it's still not the same though. Like there's always uniqueness in people, and going back to the regret side, I wish I was more outgoing in high school.
I guess I'm not sure if I wholeheartedly agree that we share that regret. I think that I had my time of socializing 100%, like first year, even second year. just like meeting a million people. And then, I don't know, maybe it's a Queens thing. I met a lot of people I didn't like. So I guess I don't really regret meeting more people in high school because I guess on the surface I'm like a fairly judgmental person. And so I like 100% already had preconceived notions and biases about people. So like I just knew from the get-go based on I suppose baseless rumors or maybe real rumors, I don't know, that I just didn't want to be friends with somebody because of their choice of recreational activities or whatever. Like I don't really think I regret it. You're right though. I think that saying that there's always uniqueness in people is really profound and obviously as a creature that likes to socialize, we're always going to want to see people to some extent, even as, I mean, me personally, I really enjoy being alone. I would say I spend most of my time alone and it really doesn't bother me. And so I don't really think that I regret not talking to more people in high school because I was happy. And even if I was naive and unexperienced in the world, that whatever, I mean, I'd rather just be like stupid and happy in one spot. I guess at that point, I mean, it was high school. We were just focused on getting through class and getting home to do whatever. And then I guess COVID happened, so we had to start worrying about real adult life world things after that. But I don't really think I was worried necessarily about what other people thought of me because like I can't do anything to change that. Like I can't change other people's reactions, but I can always change my own actions. So I don't really think I was concerned about talking to other people. I was just happy as it was.
I think there's also a difference. You mentioned that um you're a fairly solitary person, and I would have considered myself very solitary, very solitaire. I don't even know what the right word is. Pre-COVID, and even during COVID, I just would want to hang out with my own friends. We did a few meets, I remember, that were I think technically illegal, but everyone did it. It really didn't matter. But after COVID, post COVID, I just had this shift where I wanted to interact with a bunch of other people. Part of that was I wanted to improve my social ability and be able to communicate well. I still have that goal in mind. That's a big part of why I'm doing the podcast. But from that, from wanting to get better at this, I found that I actually desire this. Originally, I didn't even desire communicating with randos out on the street, but now it feels like I have a potential friend that I can only meet in this specific situation if only I approach them. If only I meet them. They could be my best friend of my entire life, but I would never know if I didn't talk to them and they just walked past me. That that kind of goes back to regrets, but I wanted to move forward to the COVID side of things. Um, COVID as a topic. What do you think of COVID?
In retrospect,
Yes.
um, I don't know. I guess it feels so long ago and so insignificant, even though it largely controlled our lives for 2+ years. I mean, even where we were living, where the actual infected population was quite low and we weren't really at risk because, I mean, we went to school for most of our 11th and 12th grade. And I know people in larger cities and stuff in other countries, and they didn't have a single moment in person in 12th grade, and we spent roughly 50 to 60% of our time in class still.
Mm.
So I don't really. I mean, obviously it affected us and like it made it so that like stuff was online and even going into first year for me, like stuff was still online. I guess it all just seemed like a great big annoyance and I never really thought too deeply about it. I guess maybe that's just being blissfully ignorant to something bigger happening, but it's hard to care if something doesn't affect you. And people will often pretend that that isn't the case and that they want to be empathetic towards everything, but it's easy to be empathetic about people you care about because you really do care. And it's easy to be empathetic towards issues that pertain to you. But I think I found it quite difficult to care as just a 16, 17-year-old kid who just happened to be living during COVID. I didn't have any family members who got it. Even friends and friends' family members were never really infected with it. So, in retrospect, I guess it was annoying that it caused us to not have our grade 12 year for the most part, even though we were in class. I mean, we didn't really have a real graduation or a prom or anything. But I don't know if I really care that much.
Hmm. I think for me, as I kind of mentioned before, it deeply changed the way I am today. And I guess from university, because I took a gap year, so I was completely isolated. I had no friends in town. So I was basically forced, if I wanted to hang out with a friend, I was forced to go out of my way to first make a friend. But seeing from your perspective, even though you were online, you still had events, I'm guessing, in university, and you could still make friends.
I had only one class online. That was it. Everything else was in person.
Hmm.
We just weren't allowed to have, there were just restrictions on how many people you could have in your res room and stuff like that. It was pretty tame as far as the restrictions. It was the year before us that really was, I guess, robbed. I mean, I know upper years who will agree with me when I say that, that they really did not get a first year. I mean, they lived in res and they weren't allowed to leave their rooms unless it was mealtime and stuff. So I had a pretty good floor. Like everybody there was nice. So I don't really think that COVID took a lot away from me. But I have to say I do agree with you that it probably changed the way I am, but maybe in ways that are slightly more subtle than
Okay.
you experienced.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see
I
that.
would say, sorry, go ahead.
No, that was what I was gonna say. You
I would say it probably made me lazier.
go.
And then that I've just been working ever since to get that back. I mean, like the amount of time we probably spent rotting doing absolutely nothing during COVID, like being realistic, it's probably a disgusting amount of time. But like,
Yeah,
what could we do? Right?
no, I
Like,
agree.
school was basically nothing. I mean, I'm sure in most places it's the same, but like our marks couldn't go down. There was almost no point other than it feels wrong to not go to online class. We couldn't really hang out. We just like played video games and just like talked on Discord and stuff. And so it definitely made me lazy. That's probably like the biggest effect it had on me, and it was mostly negative.
Yeah, that's interesting because to me, I feel like it had a positive effect on me. I feel like socialization is, you can't really see that as negative. I feel like that's mainly positive. But also, what's interesting too is the initial effect on me. I would consider, if you were to ask me originally during COVID, is COVID good or bad? I would say it's bad. But having learned this, having this significant event happen where I can't hang out, where I have to act differently, I think that influenced me for the good. But it's the complete opposite for you. You would say it's like, I guess Marx would be the good side of it, but everything else that came from it was not good. Now that you can see it in retrospect.
I think that my ability, yeah, I mean, generally, I think so, but I don't think my ability to socialize went necessarily up or down. I've never really had a
Hmm.
problem talking to people or listening or talking to multiple people. I've never like in necessarily like totally thoroughly enjoyed meeting new people, and I don't really think COVID changed that at all. I think it was literally just like to me that it made me not want to do anything. It made me so lazy. Like it was so hard to be motivated to do anything. That was like the most when I was like literally what's the point?
Hmm. I'm sure I felt that at some point, but I can't remember much about it. It was like what, 4 years ago, 3 years ago. So
Uh we heard about it whatever 20 end of 2019, November December 2019, and then I don't think we didn't go back after March break 2020. So more than 4 years ago now. Yeah.
mhm.
Crazy how fast time has gone.
I remember in high school we had the Discord calls during COVID.
Yeah.
Those I loved that. Those were so fun. It
That
was
was
so
like
funny
the
too.
best part.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
That was like the best part of COVID was like getting on our daily Discord call with all of our classmates and just like actually like literally just doing nothing, like trying to start an assignment and it's just like complete chaos. Like people don't want to do it. Everybody's playing a different game. Yeah, that was pretty peak. That was like the best part of COVID. And like seriously, like my COVID experience was like overall positive in the moment because like it was
Yeah.
like no school. Like so I couldn't really complain. Like and I guess it was just like that, oh no school, like this is so fun, like this is so awesome. We just get to hang out and do nothing. So yeah, that was great. That was definitely the best part was sometimes the socializing with people, it depends on who it is. I would rather hang out with a lot of people in person, but some people I would just like I don't really care. I'm equal. I'm impartial to talking to them through a screen, through a mic than I am to speak with them in person. In some case maybe it's better.
Yeah. I think the experience that we had with COVID was very unique because as I said earlier, we were in the same IB cohort. Not just us, all of our male friends and some of our female friends. But can you just imagine having all the guys in a Discord server while the class is going on? Like complete chaos. And not only that, like it's like regular class, but the teacher can't censor you to not make a joke or like to stop talking. You're
Hmm.
just free reign to do whatever you want.
Yeah, it was and 24/7 too, because what do? You get up, you go to class, you get on Zoom and you join the Discord call and like and then you stay there for 6 hours, however long high school is. I can't even remember how long a high school day is. And then what happens when you're done? You have like homework to do and you stay in the call. Like it was basically 12 to 16 hours a day of just that. And yeah, like Felipe said, it was basically just chaos.
I had a lot of fun though. I
Yeah,
know I
yeah, it was
know
fun.
definitely other people like Caleb, I think he just hated it because there was nobody he was really close to and he
Mhm.
couldn't join a Discord call because there was nobody he was close to. So it was just
Yeah,
him taking a class, basically just like one
online.
on one with the teacher
Yeah.
and nothing else.
Mm.
I think that's a pretty common experience because even when I went to university, I mentioned the story of booting up Discord while on Teams, and people can't relate with me. It's a pretty unique experience.
We were lucky for sure.
Oh yeah, I'm really happy with that though.
Yeah.
That was the most fun I had. Definitely all high school, I think. Maybe just all of
Somehow
school academic life.
somehow
University's different.
it was great. Like I don't know. Maybe I really don't know what it was. Something about it. And you would think that the novelty would wear off and it didn't. I guess we had no other choice. Like
That too, yeah.
maybe it was just a good not even a good mindset. I don't want to lie and pretend we were thinking about our mindset about how we were treating each day. It was just we had fun every day. And I don't know, maybe that's just the high school mentality.
Yeah. I looked forward to this every day. So focusing more on the negative effects of COVID, there was a big surge. You can see studies that replicate this or that show this, where there was a surge of depression and suicidal tendencies during COVID, which would likely correlate with post COVID, rather comparing that to pre COVID, where there was relatively no depression. I mean, I don't want to say there was no depression, but there were fewer instances of depression and suicidal tendencies. So, what I don't even know what question I really want to ask you, but I guess what are your thoughts on this? Just having this depression epidemic, this yeah,
I guess I mean I can preface by just saying that I think it's really unfortunate and it's sad because it affects or it affected and still does affect people that I know. People, I mean, people will say that they starting COVID, they started to enter a depressive state, and some people that I know say that they've never like fully recovered. And I think that maybe it was just a, a state of boredom and not knowing what was going to come next. And it was it like taking a lens off of our situation, I can see that it must have been mind-numbingly boring. And there was basically nothing else to turn to but just sitting on your phone, especially for a bunch of high school students who haven't built lifelong habits that they like to do. I mean, I think like high school students don't always know that they like to read, that they like to play GeoGuessr, that they like to sew, that they like to run. Even in high school, you haven't necessarily fleshed out all of your hobbies. And a lot of the things I do now, I wasn't necessarily doing in high school. And
mm,
some, yes, I mean, yes and no. So I think that it's really unfortunate because all of these young people, and I'm sure this affects older people as well, but I think really for young people, it was such a drastic change. Excuse me. And it's really sad because now a whole generation of people our age, plus or minus a few years, are fundamentally different because of an uncontrollable circumstance that swept the planet like a blanket. And it really altered a lot of people's lives, which is, I don't want to say unfair because life isn't fair, but it feels unfair. It's not really fair that people were basically forced into this state. And you can always say that there's things you could have done. Oh, you just need to talk to people. You just need to go outside. But it's so tough to do that when it seems like there's no hope to do anything at all ever. I think that in indefinite how am I trying to say this? having no solution for an indefinite period of time is very taxing on somebody's mentality and mood. COVID for the longest time, for those years, what felt like the longest time, was just an unsolvable problem, and we didn't know when things were going to go back to normal. I assume that there was very little hope for a lot of people during that time, and people start to turn to self-destructive habits and just things that aren't good for you, even if they're not necessarily self-destructive, like just spending a lot of time on your phone. And people felt isolated, especially if you weren't as privileged as us to know people very directly in your class and have a Discord server already set up that you already talk in. And I can't even fathom how isolating it would have been. So I think it's really unfortunate. And I guess my thoughts go out to all the people who are affected. And I really do mean that because again, people I know still were affected and still are affected by post COVID depression or changes in mood that they haven't necessarily recovered from fully. And shout out to everybody who went through that and is still doing their best. Thank you for being here.
I agree. Yeah. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this.
Mhm.
I also, you touched on it. During COVID, there's just this cloud of like loneliness, of course, but from that, you just get meaninglessness, just like hopelessness too. And like I feel like once you get in that mindset, once you think about meaninglessness, it's very hard to get out of it because there, I personally think there's meaninglessness is a thought that not a lot of people think about unless you're depressed. You don't you don't think about what the point of life is if you're having a good life, if you're having a good time. It's only when you have a lot of time to think and you don't like how life is going right now that you consider the meaning in your life and the purpose that you're meant to have. So I guess I should probably provide a solution to that because you can't just like blurt that out and say nothing from that. Honestly, my solution would just be religion. I don't see how else you really solve it. It's just because even now, like I kind of didn't really say this, but I guess I'll say this more clearly. Like I hinted at it, but I would say for post COVID, a little post COVID, I was depressed. And that's that's kind of the experience that I'm going off of. What I will say though is now I'm in a much better state and I'm not thinking about constantly thinking about like what's my purpose in life? What's the point of doing X if I don't know my purpose in life? So I guess my solution is just religion and if not that, like just don't think about it. I I still have to work on the solution. I will say
If
one thing that's pretty
Mhm.
important though is having guardrails. So set up I've heard this in a different podcast actually where he recommends I think it was James Clear. No, Tim Ferriss. He recommends having a set of friends that you're going to hang out with. You predetermine a hangout time and what you're going to do specifically so that you have to show up for that. Especially, this is really important for um, suicidal ideation. having something to look forward to would be a solution in a way. We can move on to a more happy note, I guess, a more positive note. What would you say the peak moment in your life is?
So far,
Yeah.
that's really hard. I feel like I've had a great life. I wouldn't necessarily be like fulfilled if I stopped living today, but I think that I have been incredibly fortunate to have like a fulfilling, for the most part, life. So the best moment of my life.
You can take your time.
Yeah, I think I might.
Mm.
Um, maybe I'll say two or three, two or three individual things. Probably some timeline or portion of like my relationship with my girlfriend. Like maybe just I think our like first date because that's like a huge thing, and then after that like the anticipation of knowing that like this is my plan for the rest of my life and I'm really happy with it and I'm still happy with it. I'm really happy that that's my plan for the rest of my life. So that's like a like I can always rely on that even if it's not necessarily one peak. It's like a slowly increasing gradual slope that I guess it never ends. And that's the beauty I think of having a partner that you like actually enjoy being with is like the peak of that never goes away. Especially if you guys are both putting all of your, not all of your, especially if you guys are putting a lot of effort into your relationship, then you can 100% always have more enjoyment. It's awesome. Aside from that, um, I would just have to say like, so maybe I can't say that's that good though. Just hearing your parents or people you care about, your parents or guardians, like saying they're proud of you or being happy for you is like one of the most gratifying things that you can experience. Like hearing somebody that you look up to, whose wisdom and knowledge you appreciate, saying that they're proud of you is infinitely more powerful than people realize. And if you've never experienced that, then I really feel for you because I think that it's so crucial for the development of a child and and a teenager as well that your parents should be telling you that they're happy for you when things go well, that they're proud of you. You know, when you're a kid, you're not necessarily an independent entity from your parents yet, so you're kind of attached to them just because you depend on them. And so it's really important for them to not only encourage you to grow and be independent on your own, but also tell you that they're happy for you. So I think that hearing my parents say that at key moments throughout my life has been really nice. Um, and it obviously you don't want to oversaturate it because then it starts to lose meaning. But like hearing that at high school graduation or after, when I tell my parents how I did at my most recent semester of school and hearing them say that they're happy for me, I think it's just like it provides so much more dopamine than you can even imagine. It's so good. It just feels awesome. And then my third has got to be I can't even pick one specific moment, but just like at some moment hanging out with friends and just like literally laughing until you pee your pants. Like that feeling of I could laugh forever. Just no, whether you're religious or not, I think that's literally what life is about. It's just like enjoying the time that we have here because it's so awesome. Like just spending time with your friends and laughing uncontrollably is it's sheer joy. It's awesome. Those are my three sort of general things, I guess, would be, which is like I mean, a pretty cliche pinnacle is just family, friends, and my relationship with my girlfriend. So,
I think that's a good answer.
what would you say the crowning moment of your life has been thus far, whether it be one or many?
I think the peak enjoyment. So I guess now that you ask me, there's two ways you can interpret it. peak in terms of accomplishment, but peak in terms of happiness. Accomplishment, I'm not too sure. I feel like I haven't accomplished anything significant yet to a point where I would undoubtedly say this is my peak accomplishment of my life currently.
Mhm.
But for happiness, I would say there was a specific time where I went to the Canada-wide Science Fair. I competed in the Canada-wide Science Fair. I was pretty lucky in having competed because I participated in a science competition regionally. Well, actually, no, sorry. It was throughout the school. I was nominated by my teacher, and then the judges thought that I had a good project, so they nominated me regionally, and then from that, they nominated me for the Canada-wide Science Fair. And I put a lot of work into that, and then we went on a week long. It was basically a vacation, honestly. And I met a couple of people. This was grade 8, so before high school. Met
It
a
was
couple of people.
Calgary, Alberta. Where was it? Can't remember.
It was Regina.
Regina, Saskatchewan. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm familiar with the story, but I haven't heard it in a long time. So
Mm. Yeah, Lauren from high school, from our same IB cohort. She was
really,
also in this. Yes. She was
that's
also in the Canada
that's
wide.
very funny. That's
Yeah. It was funny too because we had the same, what was it? We went into the same classroom for IB and we recognized each other. Or maybe it was just like, no, it was even before IB because we recognized each other like just
Mhm.
in the halls.
That's so cool.
Mm. But I was saying that week of the Canada Wide Science Fair, that was the most fun I think
Mhm.
I've ever had. Like it's hard to gauge, of course,
Yeah.
but there were so many activities to do. It
Mhm.
was hosted at a university, so it felt like university, but no studying.
And you were 13.
Yeah,
That sounds fun though.
yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I'm sorry. I'm eating peanuts. I'm rather hungry.
That's all right. Um,
I wish we had been able to do the science fair together. I wish my elementary school had one that year.
they didn't.
They had one when I was in third grade, when we were in third grade, and I won. And then we didn't have one again throughout the rest of elementary school.
Whoa.
Maybe fourth grade. No, third grade, I think. No, fourth grade. It was fourth grade. And we were supposed to have one every 4 years. That's what they told us. So we were going to have one in eighth grade, and then we didn't.
Hmm. I remember it being we had a science fair every year after grade 4. No, starting grade 4, I think. We had to do a science fair project for our
Had to.
school. Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, we did not have that. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's really strange. We were in the same school board.
We were the same school board, just in a town away.
Yeah. Huh.
That's really strange.
It is. I didn't consider that. Huh. So now that you've already said what your peak moment is in life, I'd ask you, what would your peak moment all time? What do you think your peak would look like?
Realistically speaking.
Well, I'm trying to get an idea of your goals long term.
Mhm. Well, my plan, well, let me give you the rough outline here, is to finish my internship, which will finish next August, and wrap up my 4th year of school. I want to go back and work for roughly 2 years, do my master's, and then go work again. If after my master's I really enjoy it, still doing school, doing research, I would like to get my PhD.
Hmm.
Not as a doctor, but I would like to get a doctorate. And I love learning. I seriously, I love to learn things, especially if I care about it. I can never get enough. And so, in an ideal world, actually, maybe not an ideal world, with a PhD, I have the option to go work somewhere similar to where I do now, or I can become a prof. And I like to teach as well, or not necessarily I like to teach. I like to talk about things that I enjoy. That's about the only time I would like to talk is if I get to talk about stuff that I like. So being a prof would be pretty cool. That would probably be something, whether it be research or just like the classes that I would teach, that is a pretty reasonable crowning achievement. And so is getting a PhD. Um, if I don't become a prof, then probably something at work, wherever I choose to work in the end. Um, and I mean, whether it be just one project or just my career as a whole, I think that the best for me in terms of like pinnacle of like achievement is yet to come, and it's something like that. And in terms of happiness, probably something either whether it be a wedding or birth of a child or something like that, I think is probably maybe like the happiest moment of my life is probably yet to come. And I think that that's a very, very hopeful attitude that anybody watching this video, make sure that you remember your happiest moment, your greatest achievement is yet to come. Always remember that. So probably something along those lines. I guess that's pretty, again, cliche answer. My happiest moment is going to be something in my family, and my most proud moment will be something at work. But I think maybe those are, I guess, at least somewhat specific to me. Um, I think that a PhD is a cool and reasonable long-term goal for me. I always wanted to win a Nobel Prize as a kid, but I don't know if that's really realistic.
I don't even know if Nobel Prize is something that you'd want to strive for. I mean, obviously, like it's a crowning achievement. It's recognized throughout the world, but there's a bunch of like you think of dynamite, was it?
Hmm.
That was a Nobel Prize. But
Hmm.
like that yeah, it had positive effects, but it had way more negative effects.
Hmm. You're right. I guess that was maybe me being as a kid not understanding necessarily what a Nobel Prize comes with, because you win a Nobel Prize, you don't strive to win a Nobel Prize, you just do your research, and if it's groundbreaking, you just win.
Mm,
You don't like it's not like a science fair. You don't like submit a Nobel Prize project and say, I'm gonna win the Nobel Prize. I'm gonna enter the Nobel Prize competition and win the Nobel Prize for literature, for chemistry, for biology. You just do your job, you do your research, and if it's groundbreaking, then you win.
yeah.
So it's a difficult thing, probably. I don't know. I don't know much about winning the Nobel Prize, but I do know that it's probably not something you strive for. It's just something that comes along with the success of your work.
Yeah. I think the most relatable one, I don't know much about Nobel Prizes either, but I feel like I know more about Oscars and Grammys. Those things I'm kind of pulling experience, not experience, pulling um, opinions on, where there's tons of actors that don't have Oscars that I would consider better than the ones
Mm,
who have Oscars, and similar with Grammys.
mhm.
Like part of it is subjective science. You can, I guess, objectify, but there's definitely some subjective leeway. You
You're
can
right.
you can be very influential and have a massive positive impact on the world without having a Nobel Prize.
That's also true. But yeah,
So,
maybe that's a bit of not so much a goal, but like that would be a cool thing to have happen in my life.
oh, no
Will
kidding,
it
yeah.
happen? Like, I don't know. Who's to say? All I can do is keep doing what I do and work, I guess. I mean, I don't know. It's difficult to say. It's hard to just say something like that.
Mm. I remember asking to, so this is going back to the happiness, peak happiness. I remember asking people, I asked my parents and my uncle. I'm sure I've asked more people and they've given me the same response, where their happiest moment was the birth of their child. And the second happiest moment was the birth of their second child. But like equal happiness. I guess
Yeah.
y-
Yeah.
you get marginally less happiness since you already know the feeling, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah.
You already have the birth of a child, so you know what to expect, but it's still like that, those being the top one and top two experiences of happiness.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
It's almost like that's our goal as humans.
yeah. No, that for
I
sure
mean,
is.
ultimately. Yeah.
It's kind of weird thinking about people who don't want to have kids though. Like you know I assume, speaking about this, you would want to have a child.
Yeah.
But there is people, like there's even this wave of, I guess, toxic feminism where a lot of girls are being influenced to not even have children. I remember this podcaster bringing up this list of reasons. I think it was like 101 reasons why not to have a child. And one of the stupid reasons he brings up is because you can't wear high heels anymore or something stupid like that. Or like you have a gut now.
I don't know.
Mm,
That just seems like maybe one not I don't want to say one bad apple, but like I know men and women who don't want to have kids for personal reasons, and I guess I respect. I mean, I do respect the notion of not wanting to bring a child into the current state of the world. I think that's a respectable point to make. But men and women, I mean, are meant to be together and have kids. Or like, I don't know, not even necessarily men and women. I mean, we're meant to have children and reproduce the population. That's literally what we're supposed to do. Eh, biologically, just like from an animalistic point of view, we want to generate more offspring that I can't remember if it was you that mentioned it or in a recent video, but you want to generate offspring that are attractive enough to attract their own mate so that they can have an offspring.
mm,
And the cycle continues forever. So, but again, though, I don't think I'm in a position where I can fault somebody for not wanting to have a kid because there's plenty of people out here already. Um, and I think that dating and finding a partner is becoming increasingly difficult as well, just because of the way people are nowadays. The introduction of social media and all these things into our lives has probably made it more difficult to find a partner. So it, you got to lock somebody down if you like them. If you get along with them, you got to lock them down and live a happy life. So, but again, I think I do still respect the decision not to. I do still respect the decision not to have children. With anything like that, I'm not in a position to tell people what they should and shouldn't do. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion and to live their own life.
that's true. Yeah. I think for me though, if you basically know that it's going to be the happiest moment of your life. Yes, it's going to be a lot of work and effort, but I feel like the pros just outweigh the cons. And it it might even just be, I see it as unfortunate for those people who don't who don't see it that way, who see it like more of a chore. Although you did bring up the point where they want to do it for the greater good. They want to do it because they don't want to bring someone into a world like this. But I think I don't think that's a valid reason. I I feel like the world is always going to be in turmoil, and like you can't think like that, I guess. These are my opinions, of course. I'm not trying to be conflicting, offensive.
No, I understand what you're saying. I think that, I don't know, maybe to some extent, people do owe it to everybody else to keep the world going, but I just don't know if it matters to me. If somebody tells me in 20 years from now, oh, I don't have any kids. It Okay, that's fine with me. I just think that as a whole, um, I'm pretty nonchalant about what other people do.
Yeah, I would agree with that
So
too. For me,
I think that I just want to let other people go about their business, regardless if they are similar or alike or not alike from myself. Everybody, I mean, although our human condition is the same, none of us share the same experiences, so we're all entitled to live life the way that we want to, provided we're not harming other people
yeah,
deliberately and on a daily basis.
that's a big thing with going back to religion because a lot of people have this notion that they have to convert everyone they meet. And it's like you can give advice, but it's their will, it's their freedom to take it. And a lot of the time when you forcefully present what you consider advice to someone, they will dismiss it. People just have to figure out advice on their own, their own advice.
I think that's not only insightful but true. I think that the more you force somebody to do something, the less they're going to want to actually do it. People need to be allowed to explore on their own. It's like your parents, you're starting to do the dishes and then your parents tell you to do the dishes. It doesn't make you want to do the dishes,
Yeah,
does it? Like, and I think that's where a lot of people, their discontent for organized religion comes from, is because one too many people tried one too many times to force them into it. And I think that is not the right way to go about it if that's your goal. I think you just need to, like you said, let people figure things out on their own. And so that's, I think, like, as much as it's nice to give advice and it feels good to be knowledgeable and it feels good to be asked for help on something, I mean, you just got to let people live their own life and ultimately they, only they can choose what they decide to do.
yeah, yeah. You mentioned there was this, just to mention this quickly, we're already at the 1 hour and 30-minute mark.
Whoa,
So,
really?
yeah.
It's felt pretty quick.
Yeah, no, it's been nice. I will ask this as the last deep question, and then I'll ask you a couple of more relaxing questions, I guess you can think of
Sure,
it.
sure.
So what I want to ask you is, you mentioned that there was a dating crisis. How do you think you'd fix it?
That's a really tough question because I'm no tech CEO. I'm no lawyer, maybe I should just like briefly preface and say what I think the problem is. Um, I think that social media has completely ruined how we view relationships and attractiveness because
Mm.
it's so easy for like a guy to just scroll forever on Instagram and just see like a girl wearing basically nothing over and over and over again and just see like these like similar looking girls over and over and over again, and you can just like scroll forever and just keep looking. And like when you think of it in a vacuum, like imagine what that does to your perception of what you find attractive. Like that's crazy if that's all you look at over and over again. And so now you have like, I guess you have guys who are like basically, and this may seem uh I guess naive, but you have really shallow guys who are basically only looking for looks
No,
in
yeah.
a woman. And and so that is like probably the first problem. And that applies to women as well. This sort of um what's the word? This paradox almost where it's like everybody wants somebody more attractive than them now, but like when you say that out loud, you can instantly tell why it doesn't work because there are simply put more and less attractive people. Even if everybody, like if you're a firm believer that everybody is beautiful in some way and that there's somebody for everybody, which I think is true. I think there really is somebody for everybody. There all these people are here. There has to be somebody you're compatible with who you find attractive that they find you attractive.
Do you
There's
think
always going to be.
do you think there's the one?
I think it's a matter of circumstance and like I think you could there's 8 billion people out there. And assuming that you are only attracted to the opposite gender, there's still 4 billion people, right? And so I think that surely you would meet other compatible people, but it's a matter of like age, location, language, time, all these things that it essentially narrows it down to just one. So you can look at it in a few ways, I guess. You can look at it that there's billions, or you can, I guess, choose to be blind to that and you can just see it as there's only one person. There's only one person that you are meant to be with. And I guess that's easy to say because I'm in a happy, committed relationship and I never will have another intent of having another one. So I guess it's easy for me to say that. But back to the original point is now that everybody's trying to date out of their league, it's sort of like it's like pulling bricks out in a tower. Maybe this isn't a good analogy. Like in an ideal world, in a realistic world, a 10 out of 10 man and a 10 out of 10 woman are equal, and so are a 9 out of 10, and so down this Jenga tower. But if everybody is trying to like reach up, then what happens? Because for the most part, you can say it's safe to assume that 10 out of 10 men and 10 out of 10 women will be together because this is not just looks, this is everything, I guess. Like the perfect men and women will be together because there's nowhere else to go. Because to each other, and to society, they're perfect. So then what happens to the 9 out of 10 people? Because they want a 10 out of 10. And then what happens to the 8 out of 10 people? Because they want a 9 or a 10. But all the 10's already gone.
Well, I'm curious what you mean by 10 out of 10 person. Like,
Somebody who you find attractive, interesting, and who cares about you.
but then that would be subjective. That would be different for every person. So some one person's 10 would not be another person's
You're
10.
right. Maybe my Jenga tower is only based on looks.
Hmm,
Maybe that's a better way to put it.
I can see that.
A- And I think yeah, maybe that makes more sense because then I guess I think that was what I was trying to relate to the social media point is that you only see 10 out of 10 people on social media. Or you only see 9 out of 10 people on social media. Yeah, okay, this makes more sense. Thank you for making that correction for me. As far as appearance goes, because which is what a lot of people are going off of now, and not that that isn't an important thing, but that's what a lot of people go off of if they're not meeting a lot of people in person, right? So you making the same analogy, there's no 10 out of 10 appearance people left for the 9 out of 10 people. And they're like, well, do I settle or do I wait for a 10 out of 10 person? And then it just goes down the pyramid. And by the time you're at the bottom, like it's totally awry. And now it's just confusion. Like,
Yeah. I I don't mean to be I'm going to push back a bit
mhm,
because I don't fully agree that um let me just maybe explain my point. Men and women have different they're looking for different things in relationships. So men are generally looking for physical attractiveness. I say generally, and I say this in terms of more of a primate mindset, if that makes sense. So our ancestral males would look at physical attractiveness as a key feature for women. And then women would look for status as a key feature, as a key mating feature for males. Now, I think it's good that people are no longer focusing. Okay, I think it would be a good thing that people no longer focus solely on looks or on status. But no matter what, there's going to be that prevalent in society. And I don't think you can really take it away at any point. I think religion does a good idea of this because if you think about this, I'll try to not make this such a long rant, but if you think about this, the idea of monogamy is actually pretty modern. Before, you'd see males producing offspring with multiple females. And you can see that biologically, just like sperm is just way more common than eggs. And the idea that women have to gestate or the gestation of a baby is takes 9 months and is completely dependent on the mother. Rather, males have basically no affiliation with the child other than that they share genetic similarities. So, going from that, basically what I wanted to say was you have this idea where men are just bound to prioritize looks to a certain extent, now in the modern realm. Um, right. And what I was saying, sorry, what I was saying with religion was basically like monogamy. Religion is saying monogamy is good, where you a girl is able to tie down one male, and that's to the benefit of the female because you having two partners raise a baby is going to be miles better than just the mother raising the baby and having the resources of the male, of course, helps with the development of the baby. So before um before I guess we really considered religion a priority, before religion was more mainstream, I should say. It was more that males would mate based on looks, based on physical attractiveness, and females would mate purely based off of status. And now, my point is going back to modern times, you're still going to see males that aren't going to follow this idea that they want monogamy. They don't think monogamy is desirable even. And so they'll follow these ways, and even those who think monogamy is desirable, they might want um they'll still be heavily influenced by physical attractiveness for males and again for female status. But man, I was butchering this point. What I wanted to say was basically there's still going to be hints of this in society, but you're completely right where it's just been exacerbated. The amount of 10 out of 10 physically attractive girls showing up on males' social media is outrageously high, unrealistically high. And not only that, you have females that are now looking at 10 out of 10 males that previously they would have never they would have never considered looks to be part of a factor. But now with this rise in social media, rise in 10 out of 10 physically attractive males, females are going to be even more um going to have even higher criteria that a male is going to have to meet, and even to the point where it's unrealistic of that female.
Yeah. Um, I guess that just sort of ties together the general idea that social media is bad for the dating world
Oh yeah.
and the ease of access of the internet is in some ways bad, as much good as the internet does. Yeah, it's bad. And to answer the actual original question, um, how would I solve the problem? Just go. That's so hard to say though, because I'm not somebody who likes to meet new people necessarily, but just go and meet new people. And that's so much easier said than done, especially if you're an anxious person or or somebody who is just generally introverted. That's so much more difficult. But the more you put yourself out there, out of your comfort zone, even if it's a little bit at a time, the more likely you are to eventually meet the right person. Who is the right person will not just be accommodating, it will just be second nature to them. Whether it be because they're so alike or so different, I think both of those dynamics can work in a relationship, provided you care about the other person. I don't really think it matters how alike or different you are to a certain extent. So the more you put yourself out there, even if it's a little bit at a time, I think that's just generally better. I mean, my girlfriend and I were like sort of friends before we were ever dating, but we weren't like good friends. I mean, we had known each other for several months, but we weren't even really like friends up until maybe a month before we were really dating. And that was, and I, at that point, to me, right, we weren't friends. That's what I was trying to do. I was trying to get her out on a date. That was my goal, unbeknownst to everybody else at first. So, and I'm a relatively shy guy. I mean, I like to express myself and be loud when I'm with my friends, but like with a group of people I don't really like, I'm not particularly outgoing, as I mentioned a few times. So, um, that is, I guess, my solution is to get out, do little things, and slowly meet people, make a conscious effort to go up to somebody you might seem interesting, meet people in places where you're sure you might meet similar people. If you love to play Dungeons and Dragons, go to the Dungeons and Dragons club and you might meet somebody there who you really like. If you like going to the gym, go to the gym and you might meet somebody there who you really like.
The gym is a little strange
Yeah,
because
maybe not the gym. Maybe not the gym,
yeah,
but uh, that's its own like can of worms.
yeah.
Anybody who's been on social media knows that like approaching a girl
Oh,
or a guy at a gym is can be really weird, can be really awkward, can go really poorly. So,
it could work too, but you just you almost have to know the person beforehand, which is impossible because well, I guess not impossible, but like how do you know a person if you want to know a person by meeting them? How do you pre-meet them? Like you can't.
Yeah, yeah, it's not possible. So, I don't know. Maybe that's advice still coming from a place of privilege because I don't have to look for a partner.
Mm,
So, but that's what I would
mhm.
say to people.
I want to touch on the point that you said, and I hope I'm not misconstruing this. There is the one. The, everyone has the one. What I mean by that is there is someone out there right now that is 100% compatible with you.
Are you asking if that's what I'm implying?
Yes, yeah.
Uh, I don't know if I would say like 100% compatible, but I think that there's somebody who is very compatible with you that circumstantially you will meet and it will make them like one of one at that time. And it's up to you to make the most of that experience in meeting them. When somebody that you deem compatible for however many reasons, it's up to you to take that time, to take advantage of that time, because you may never meet them again. So there can, in some ways, that sort of defeats what I'm saying. And there can be more than the one because you may have that experience again. But I think that just thinking that is a good way to think about it if you're upset or you think that you might never find somebody. Because I think that, again, circumstantially and just based on the criteria that you subconsciously have about a partner, you will find somebody eventually.
Mhm.
Um, so I guess there isn't really a 100% compatible person. I'm sure there is, but like humans are so nuanced and there's so much dimension to our way of thought and just the way we operate as creatures that like it's tough to say 100% compatibility. Like in theory, 100% compatibility, the only person you're 100% compatible with is yourself.
Even
Because
then.
and even then, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes you can be your own worst enemy.
Yeah.
But nobody knows the inner workings of your brain like you do. So like I think that holding out for like almost there's okay, so I have two like short I guess sayings. Like is that like holding out for the perfect person isn't really a good
Mm,
mentality, but also I think that something I've been saying for a while or thinking for a while is just that imperfect people make perfect relationships because nobody is perfect. Fundamentally, nobody is perfect. And accepting the other person's flaws as they are and having them do the same for you will make you guys perfectly compatible because you know how to operate around each other. You know what irritates them. You know what they like, what they don't like. And people aren't perfect. And you and your future partner will not be perfect, neither will your relationship always be perfect. So you have to remember, I think you have to remember that imperfect people are always going to create a seemingly perfect situation together.
I completely agree. What I was gonna get to is that I don't believe there is the one. And I think that's actually a healthy thing to think because you see in all these Disney movies that there's the prince and the princess who's waiting for the prince. And all she has to do is just wait. And all the prince has to do is just find her. And once they found each other, they don't have to do any work. It's already they fit a puzzle perfectly. So there is no struggle. They just live happily ever after.
It's set in stone, sometimes literally.
Yeah, yeah. But I think that's actually a dangerous approach for dating because you you definitely have to be malleable. If you're
Yeah,
not
I agree
willing
with that.
to move at all, it's going to be an awful relationship. It's not even going to be a relationship.
You're right. You need to be flexible and accommodating.
Mm. And with that in mind, you get the idea where it, it's on a more hopeful note where you have to find someone who's compatible, but they don't have to be perfectly compatible.
Yeah,
So given that, you like there's bound to be someone compatible for you. And as you said, you just have to yeah, you just have to put down your gaming controller and your phone and go outside and talk to people.
go outside.
Yeah.
Go outside.
All right, so I want to talk about a few more things and then we'll wrap it up. We're already
Sure.
at the 1 hour and 51-minute mark.
It's a bit of a
So,
long one.
oh man, it's a long one, but I think it's been going pretty well as a first podcast.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it'll be a good stepping stone for you
Yeah,
as far as your journey towards being the most sociable version of yourself that you can be.
that's a good way to put it. Yeah, I have a lot of things to work on, and I'll probably rewatch this even just to.
Might help.
Yeah, I definitely think so. What are you gonna do this week? What are you thinking of
The rest
doing?
of this week.
Yeah,
So, I've got some big stuff at work coming up. We were supposed to run a big test tomorrow, but we've actually had to sort of make some last minute changes. So probably most of my day tomorrow will be spent setting that up. I was looking forward to running this. I would discuss it more, but I think most of my work is under an NDA, so I don't really know how much I can say. But it's going to be pretty interesting when things are all set up. So I'm looking forward to that. And then I was supposed to go, funny enough, go home and go sailing this weekend, but a friend of mine was supposed to give me a ride, and I was supposed to go sailing with. Can't come anymore, so I can't go. But um, my girlfriend's coming to Kingston to help her sister move. So she'll be coming here Friday to Saturday, so I'm going to give them a hand moving some stuff around. That's like my one big event for the weekend. That'll be like a Saturday thing. And then I'm gonna clean my house Sunday. And then I'm gonna do my daily things. So probably tonight I'll tackle my next like 10, 15 area codes,
yeah.
and
You're
maybe just go
taking
for a quick bike ride. Sorry,
every night. You're going through 10 area codes. You're trying to memorize 10 to 15.
10 to 15. Yeah. I'm in a bit of a roadblock though. Um,
Where is it?
like I'm just having difficulties in the low 300s because my mnemonic system is having problems. As in, I'm having difficulty to be creative enough to create acronyms that are going along with these codes. So I have a mnemonic for area codes that I saw. I can't remember his name. I saw a guy do it on YouTube. He was trying to teach Rainbolt all of the American area codes. And so I sort of adapted that method of like a memory palace, whatever you want to call it. And I basically just took it straight from him because I was interested in this. So I looked it up on YouTube. And so you use these, you turn sequences of numbers into sequences of letters, which become a word that in this case you can then associate with a location. So for me, numbers 1 through 5 are A through E, 6 is S, 7 is T, 8 is G, 9 is N, and 0 is O. So like a really straightforward one is the area code 207. So using that code, that's BOT, that's bot. That's the area code for Maine. When I see Maine or when I see the number 207, I think of bot and I think of robots. I think of bots in Maine. And so now instead of a number and a place, that is a picture for me of robots in Maine. And so there are 317 area codes, and I'm going through each one. But the problem is when you're in some of these other numbers that aren't um, when there isn't a zero, you aren't guaranteed to have any vowels in the word. So whatever, 332, that's CCB. I mean, that's a bit more difficult to come up with an acronym for than BOT, right? Or not even an acronym, come up with something. I also don't know what 332 is, so don't ask. But like, um, one that I had to get more creative with, I guess, is like 210 is San Antonio. So that's BAO, that's bow. The basketball team in San Antonio is the Spurs, and when I think of a spur clacking against something, I think of the noise bow. So I see this, I think bow, and I think, oh, what goes bow? A spur goes bow. Where are the Spurs? Oh, that's the basketball team in San Antonio. So it's not always as easy as bot or cob, eating corn on the cob in Delaware. 302. That's another easy one. They're not always going to be so easy. So that's sort of the mental block I'm having. Um, and that's the disadvantage of this mnemonic as opposed to one that's all consonants, because then you fill the vowels in yourself. So the major mnemonic system, I think it's called, is like a popular one, and that's all consonants that just make the sound, and then you fill each word in with the vowel yourself in between there to make words.
Mm.
So that's the block I'm having currently. The rest of the things I'm gonna do this weekend though, ride my bike, and I'm gonna make. Oh, I don't know what I'm gonna make yet, but I'm gonna make something good for dinner probably tomorrow.
This is a random question that I had.
hmm
Would you ever get a tattoo?
I don't know actually. I thought about this myself. I just like don't know what I would get or where I would get it. That's
Yeah.
like I think that's too many decisions for me to make. I have like a linear thought path, like, and I once I have like an objective or a goal, I just like walk towards it. And I feel like a tattoo. I don't even know. Actually, that is totally not related to getting a tattoo. I think there's just like too many questions about getting a tattoo. Like, where would I get it? What would I get? What color ink do I want it in? But then like the answer to where do I get it and what do I get are not yes or no. So it's like it's you know what I mean? Like I can't just say what do I get? Yes, I'm gonna get what? No, it doesn't work like that. So I can't say no, but I can't also be like wholeheartedly yes. I guess that's not really a satisfying answer, but I would say probably not. I don't have like any particular desire, but I may at some point.
I assume you'd share the same sentiment as me. I wouldn't get a tattoo. Big reason is because I can't think of any. I think no matter what I get as a tattoo, I'd regret it.
Yeah, at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, probably over time. I just like don't know what I would want on me forever that isn't just in my brain already that I can't just like see vividly
Mm.
or remember. Maybe if I was actually okay,
All
if I
the
was
zip
really
codes.
struggling, yes, all the area codes. If I was really struggling with my memory later in life, which I think would be the most stressful thing for me, beyond losing my physical health, I think losing my memory would be would be very traumatic for me. As somebody that likes to know and remember a lot of things, I think that would be like I would be very distraught. But I would think I would start to obsessively tattoo and write on myself
Have you
to avoid
seen
forgetting
Memento?
things. I haven't, but I'm familiar.
So
Yeah.
something like that where you just
It's
like,
basically that.
yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
hilarious. I
Or
mean,
or
not
in
hilarious, not hilarious at all.
no, no.
That'd be pretty unfortunate.
Yeah.
But hilarious
So
having all the zip codes or something.
yes, yeah, just all the area codes down my back, maybe. I have to get into a mirror to see them. But
Yeah, you write it in reverse too. Oh,
yeah, so I can see them. They're upside down and in reverse on my stomach. So I can just like lift my shirt up and see, oh yeah, 207, that's Maine.
I feel like I've heard of a story of a guy who's tattooed something just for an exam, like a test.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I can't remember if it's true or not, but
Yeah, that's pretty
I
insane.
feel like it is true. I feel like I know some people who would.
What do they even do? Do they kick you out?
I don't think like how
Like what?
I
I
think
don't
it's
know.
just like well played. You beat the
Yeah,
system. Good on you. Like
in exchange to having that on your body forever, you
yeah.
get to beat the system and know one part of this exam. It was probably the quadratic formula or something too.
Mm,
Like, yeah,
yeah.
but yeah,
It might not even be true at this point. I just
it's funny to imagine it's true.
oh no, it is. It's hilarious. Last question.
Yep.
What would you say are your biggest pet peeves?
Mm. Uh, really loud breathing. Yeah. And I don't know, it would be pretty awkward if you could hear me breathing on my mic this whole time, but I hate like when people are just like, oh, oh. Oh, like they're just mouth breathing or they're snoring. Oh, that actually drives me crazy. I can't stand that. And one of my biggest pet peeves also is typing with when your phone has water on the screen, because then it starts to do like insane things. You're like typing letters you don't even mean. It's backspacing. You're on Spotify deleting songs. You just sent a text to your dog. Like it does literally anything. That actually bothers me like a lot. Like it really, really bothers me. And like it's funny to say now, but like when it happens, like like it totally infuriates me. And like I don't have the self control to just like stop typing and just like and then you dry your phone off and it's with something that's wet and it gets worse. Yeah, that's like up there. That's like actually one of my least favorite things. I hate that. I hate that. There's not a lot of things I hate, but I hate that. Um, and my last thing I guess would just be like, I was just gonna say like really loud people, but I think I would have to say, um, people. Maybe this is hypocritical considering we've just been talking about a bunch of random stuff, but people who like, actually maybe not. People who try to get closer to you or get to know you by pretending they know a lot about something you like. So this is maybe really like so like obviously like sailing is a big thing for me, and so I meet somebody who's like been sailing once. They're like, oh my gosh, like I know all this stuff about sailing, all this, and I'm
Oh yeah.
like like half of what you said was wrong. The other half is like, and it's annoying because I don't want to like discourage them because it's awesome that they take an interest and they want to get to know me, but it's annoying when they won't just like see it, and it sounds selfish to say they won't just let me talk, but they like I say that I sail and they talk about it for 10 minutes and then the conversation's over. I didn't even get to talk about a single one of my sailing experiences, with all due respect, are probably much more vast than theirs. And that's like that's my thing. And it's one thing to like relate, but it's a totally another thing to like dominate a conversation. That somebody else, it's their interest and you're dominating the conversation not with questions, but with like anecdotes, and it's not a two-way conversation. Another thing would be like playing GeoGuessr. Like I was playing GeoGuessr with like some of my old roommates, and they'd be just like one would just be like calling stuff out and be like, "Oh, you have to guess there, guess there, guess there," and I know it's wrong, but I can't. I don't want to be rude and be like, "Actually, it is definitely not there because of X, Y, and Z." But like, it's annoying because they won't like like. Again, it feels selfish to say they won't let me do my thing when it's a thing that we're doing together. But I think maybe the overarching point is I don't like people who are overbearing and like try and force too much
Yeah.
onto a conversation or onto a topic.
So forcing people. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd agree with that. It's funny because I would definitely relate with the wet phone thing. And I didn't
so
consider
bad.
that as a pet peeve until you mentioned it. Like I didn't even have it on my radar, thinking that you would mention it. But yeah.
No, like and it makes me so unreasonably angry. I think like that's some of the most upset I've ever been. And it's just one of those things that will really bother me like obsessively. And I can't make it, I can't like not be upset over it. It just like no matter what I do, I could take 10 deep breaths and start meditating and I would still be mad. I would still be absolutely fuming at it. It's just one of those things, everybody has something that sets them off. And I know that it's probably the same way for you with something else. There's something that will just set
That's
you
great.
off. So, and sometimes you don't know until it happens.
Mhm.
Like and the classic one is like going to your door at the end of a long day and you drop your keys. It's like, oh my God. Like, it's just one of those things. So,
Yeah, I've had those. Yeah. Mm. So we're already past 2 hours. 2 hours and 5 minutes exactly.
nice, nice.
I think this is an appropriate time to end the podcast.
Yeah, sure.
I I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for
I
having me.
for those who don't know, Andrew heavily influenced this podcast even just beginning, and I'm glad I had you as a first guest. I think that was also very appropriate given
Hmm.
that you had so much influence on me. And I mean, just having you a close friend on the podcast, that's just a regular talk. That's nice.
Yeah, exactly. That's just a regular 2 hours discussion for us, except I guess guided.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, a little different, but it's a nice experience for sure.
yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you for watching, I guess. I don't really even know how I'm gonna end the podcast. How do you really even end podcast?